the time, they don't really have the impact that they would have had that night so many years ago when Jesus sat down with his disciples at a Passover meal, and he said to them, "Do this in remembrance of me." Because you see, every other year that they could probably remember, the words that were spoken, the traditions that were upheld, the different elements that were spread out on the table and were ritually taken and explained and consumed, all the questions that were asked, and they are asked every year in the same manner, every single year. Why is this night different than all other nights? Why is it on this night that we eat bread without leaven, whereas on every other night we eat bread that is leavened? Why is it on this night that we drink 7 glasses of wine, whereas every other night we don't? And the whys and the whys and the whys are asked, usually by the son, so that the father or the head of the family can answer the questions. And in doing that, the memory of the event of Passover is passed down from generation to generation. This is why. This is what this all means. You take the bread that is not leavened and you eat it because it reminds you that when God said to Moses and to his people to make bread, but don't put leaven in it because this night you're going to have to leave quickly. And you won't have time for it to rise and bake normally. So you remember that. We drink the wine because we remind ourselves that it was through the blood of the Lamb that God told us to put over the doorposts of our doors, so that when the angel of death comes down through the streets of Egypt, the angel will see the blood over the doorposts and will pass over those homes and will not enter them. But the homes that do not have the blood, the angel of death will go in, and the firstborn of everything in that house, whether it be a human or whether it be livestock, will die. Everything that was in part of that Passover meal has very, very specific meaning and had powerful memory that was tied to it. And every year they would sit down at the table and the ritual would be played out over and over and over again until everybody, youngest child to oldest adult, would be able to, by heart, remember. They would remember what this night meant. It was powerful. It was very special. But not this night. This night was different. It was different because on this night when Jesus told his disciples to go and prepare for the Passover meal, and they went and they spread out a table. And on that table, there was the lamb bone, and on that table was the bitter herbs, and on that table was the unleavened bread, and on that table was the glasses of wine. And on that table was all of the symbols of Passover that these people, these disciples, had always remembered, and it was coming back to them, and they knew what was coming. And as the meal progressed, Jesus took bread, and he broke it like he normally would have done at any other time, and he hands it to them, and they are remembering. Until he said, "Do this in remembrance of me." That would have shocked them. What does he mean? Do this in remembrance of him. When Jesus passed the wine and gave it to everybody, they knew what that wine represented. They saw it. They've heard it for years and years and generation after generation. They knew what that wine represented. And they expectantly waited for the words to be spoken, except Jesus said, "From now on, do this in remembrance of me." Do this in the remembrance of my body that will be broken. Do this in remembrance of my blood, which will be shed. Do this in remembrance of my sacrifice for your salvation. Do this in remembrance of me. What we will partake in here later tonight is a uniquely Christian supper that is steeped in that same kind of tradition. We know the words. We know what they mean. But it's not a reenactment of Passover anymore. We believe that it is bread and wine. It's nothing more. It is bread and wine. But it's bread and wine that with faith and trust, we say God is in, with, and under. So that as we take that bread and we eat it, and we take that wine and we drink it, we are taking in Christ and all that God did for us by sending His Son to the cross. We know the story, just like the disciples knew the story. But on this night, Jesus changed everything. And so tonight we are doing this in remembrance. And we start with the choir who will be singing